For joining us today. We are about to begin our budget hearing for the Bureau of Research. I'm Corey Williams, Chair of the Finance Committee, joined by Councilors Hogan, Nave, Caldwell, Gathers, and Monto. And we are also joined by Madam President Hudson. Would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Hi. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for rescheduling the hearing for today from yesterday. I haven't been feeling well, so it was very, very helpful.
Are you okay now?
I have pneumonia, but I'm not contagious. No. I'm not, I've been on an antibiotic. I've been on an antibiotic since Saturday. So.
That's why everybody's well. I'm just kidding. Well, take your time.
Yeah, hope you're feeling better.
Thank
I'll be
you.
easy, I can.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Janet Burke. I am the Director of Research. Research is a department that does research, and we're the information keepers for a lot of the departments in the city of Syracuse. We have, in the last 10 years probably, become a grant writing, grant managing department. So we, in addition to doing all of the information keeping and researching for grant opportunities, we write some grants, we manage grants, and we're also in charge of all the records for the city of Syracuse.
And my biggest question, I don't really have too much to say about, I think what you do is phenomenal. My biggest thing is when I was looking at this, do you need more help?
I mean, I think everybody needs more help. Sure, yeah, of course. If we had more people, we'd have more output. However, I will tell you that in the last year, we have been able to put together a really great staff, and everybody's working well together, and we're getting a ton done. A couple of them are fairly new to the grants world, but are picking up very quickly, and we've been very, very lucky.
What was your change in personnel on this?
Well, we had, we took 2 new people. We have 2 new grants procurement specialists. Okay. We have a fairly new, although I think she's been here a year and a half, an administrative assistant. And we also had a program manager who was in charge of one particular grant. She has unfortunately left the city to go to work for the state. And, but that was the other one, the other new person.
And then within this is just for me,
Sure.
everything looks good. I don't
Okay.
have any other thing, but as far as like grant applications, like so you guys do research for grants across the whole entire city operations, or do you just do
We certainly try to. Okay. There are ones that we are very regularly involved in. And for example, police and fire are always there are a lot of annual grants. They all come at the same time. There's a lot of them. We're very involved in those. We also work with Owen Carney in planning. We just recently did one with DPW that we've been working in. Fordock is fantastic. Been working with Ann Fordock. So we look for opportunities across the city. And frequently we'll call a department and say, you know what, I saw this, I thought maybe you'd be interested in it, I'm going to email it to you. And then certainly, and if anybody comes to us and says, we need money for, a cricket pitch, then we start looking for a cricket pitch.
So is there a software related to this that you guys?
There's all kinds of software that we could be utilizing, but at this point, we're not using that. We're still on spreadsheets.
Is it just like how do you figure out the grants? How are you aware that the grants?
A lot of it, I've been around a long time, so I'm on a lot of listservs.
Okay.
We also do a lot of just digging. A lot of it is I don't know how we did it before the internet, but you Google and you find out we're looking for a cricket pitch, and somebody in Minneapolis just got a cricket pitch. Where did they get their money? And you read those articles, and then they send you somewhere else, and it's just a lot of digging.
Okay.
Jane, out of the 75 grants that are managed here, which is the estimate for the current year, how many of those were competitive grants?
Well, the management, I can't answer that off the top of my head because we didn't necessarily write all of those. We are managing them on the back end.
Right.
But I could certainly get you that information.
So then I guess if we jump to the applications, how many of those are competitive grants that you're applying and competing for with
I
other
would say at this
municipalities?
point, we're in the last few years, we have received a ton, I mean, so many, and I have lists for you here if you'd
Okay.
like to see them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of the DASNY grants, which aren't competitive unless it's something unusual. Probably about half and half at this point.
So Janet, when you say you could use more help, and I guess it's hard to quantify, is it bodies or is it technology? Where's the biggest problem?
Well, right now, the biggest problem is technology. And I rarely say that because I think we can get it done, and we can. But it is so much easier to be able to pull up a grant number and have, this is how much you've spent, this is what you've spent it on, here's the number, here's the date that we asked for reimbursement, here's the check number that we received. Just have everything coordinated between the departments would be very helpful.
Do we own grant software at all, or we're just using
No,
Excel?
not to my knowledge, no. I know there was a PeopleSoft application at one point that was discussed, but it was deemed not to be what we needed.
Did we never turn that on, Frank? Is that the answer with the PeopleSoft? That module?
Frank Kaliva, the city's chief administrative officer. Yes and no. We turned on it's called Contracts and Projects, I think, is the module that we thought could conceivably work for grants. We do not use it for the financial information or the financial reporting, Counselor. We do use it for very rudimentary tracking of contracts, but it was never fully installed or fully implemented across the city. And I think to Janet's point, I think we question whether it would truly do exactly what she needs. It would certainly be better than what we're doing now, but I don't think we think it would be fully functional for her.
So a future move to something, to a new software platform, would we be including grant software inside of that?
Absolutely. It is one of the largest criticisms from our outside auditors is our lack of controls over grants.
That's not a good thing, the lack of controls over the grants, Frank.
It is not a good thing.
Yeah, so I mean, that would prohibit us from applying to certain entities if we are found in.
I will
like we
say
got a
that
foul.
we are very fortunate that Janet is in the position that she's in because she is able, through her relationships, to manage a lot of those concerns, but that we certainly have had those concerns.
So, I mean, we don't have a situation, I notice there's a ton of police grants, and I never seen it lined up like that. So we don't have a situation where they might put a grant in and you're not aware of it by any chance, right?
Well, Counselor, we actually have started, I have one person in my department, Asia Everson, who's fantastic, and she now goes through, first of all, in working with the clerk, I write all of the letters that come to you that say, apply for and enter into an agreement. So even if we, as the Research Bureau, did not work on that particular grant, I have seen that letter and I know what's out there. I also have a double check from Asia Everson, who goes through all the agendas and keeps track of every single
So
one.
there's no grants that emanate from like the
No.
police department, fire department, you're not aware of?
No.
Okay.
Oh, right, and I do a quarterly report just for you
Okay.
to show you what we've reported to.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously, I see one of my biggest fears is that some of the departments, I mean, who makes the decision that this is a good idea to apply for a grant for this particular, not only for the money we need, but as far as this particular entity? Because, I mean, it's not a situation where we're going to the same sources all the time and departments are competing against each other.
Right, no, we very, very rarely have that.
Does it ever happen?
Maybe
because there's,
many years ago, but that hasn't happened in a long time. And I think probably, because I do have a handle on who's applying for what and what would be appropriate for what department.
And so to that point, what is the process here? So you would go ahead, your team would go ahead, do research on a grant, and then you would then forward that over to a department head or a person that's responsible in that department, and then they will make the decision whether or not if you guys should go ahead and apply for the grant?
That would be the subject, we call them the subject matter experts.
okay.
Because, for example, I'm not a planning expert, Owen Carney is, but
Right.
we would work with him on the application, although he needs no help. But yeah, the subject matter experts in the departments know what their priorities are, or what the mayor's priorities are, and what the city needs. I wouldn't necessarily, because it changes so quickly, I wouldn't necessarily know that.
And not to, be too, I don't want us to go the wrong way, but how soon are these grants being, submitted to the departments? They have ample time to go ahead and review and to say, okay, yes, because oftentimes with the grants, we do see a lot of times where some departments will come to us and they say, well, we really want to get this done because it's a deadline's coming in 3 days.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that there's ample time for the departments to
Well,
be
we
able to say
certainly
that.
do try to keep on top of that as much as we can.
Okay.
However, there are fairly regularly opportunities that pop up on a very short notice from the funder
Right.
that we need to turn around, or it's really a priority, and we'd like to apply. And we're always so grateful that you're so flexible with that. And I personally, if there is a situation that we are giving you a council letter after a grant has gone in, I always copy the council and let you know that has happened, and then you're able to decide how you'd like to handle it.
Absolutely. I greatly appreciate it. And your work is great as well. Thank you.
See, I don't see any professional services line. So we don't outsource. I'm just thinking about certain expertise. Does that come interdepartment, like for instance, water infrastructure?
So I would say, for example, water infrastructure,
Right.
we would deal with the internal subject matter experts. If for development of the grant, that department needs outside help or outside advisement, that would come through the department themselves.
Okay, so they would go outside for
Correct.
professional service for expertise in order to write the grant?
Correct.
Okay.
So Janet, I look at grant procurement as a really great opportunity to move forward a lot of projects within our city. And, thinking about how can we bring in more revenue, more funds, is it a lack of, foresight and planning for what we need and when we need it? Is it on the procurement end where we have limitations, or is it on the management end that we have limitations?
In a perfect world, in my opinion, I would love to have a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan with the departments and say, for example, we have plans to do one this summer, to meet with the police department and say, what is it that you're going to be looking to do? Now, that could change. It could be, there could be something that happens and they realize there's this new technology and that's what they need now, or what. And to have an idea so that when something comes up, we can go, oh yeah, that's exactly what we need for, the drones or whatever. I'm just making that up. But yeah, I would love to, and I think every department would love to have a 3 or 5 year plan that knows exactly how they are going to work going forward. That would be ideal.
Right. And what's preventing that? And that might be,
Well, I think part of it is capacity, and part of it is just such a ever-changing, everything changes so quickly that when we think we're headed in one direction, something else comes down the pike, and we're off doing something else. So, but as I said, we are going to start with one department, with the police department, and sit down with them and try and put together a plan and see how well it works.
You're going to have, you have 7 people working for you. I was talking to Councilor Williams, and how many grant writers are there over the school district?
they have
150
6
or something like that?
Nope,
or-
they've got 6 in procurement, 6 in management.
Okay, so
of
they
the
got
grants.
12,
Yep.
and you got 7.
And one of those, well, actually, 2 of those positions, one is ARPA related, she's only working on ARPA, and one is a particular grant, works on a particular grant.
I have a question
Okay.
on one of the grants, current New York State, I believe the Department of Justice, Northside cameras, Pontic Carbon. So the grant amount was $25,000. You spent $16,000. Now there's a balance of $5,000, status is added. So what happens with that $5,000? Does that go forward to a new camera?
The vast majority of the time, that is added to another pot of money and to be able to do another camera.
Okay, but can we extend this on other parts of the north side? I know Pontic Carbon,
Well, all we would have to go, as long as it's in a similar neighborhood, an adjacent neighborhood, that would normally not be a problem. If it was a separate side of the city, we may need to go back to the sponsor. And if I think that one particular one is a member item.
Okay.
And ask the sponsor if that would be okay with them.
okay, so I'm looking more, in this area.
Sure.
Where there's a crime issue. Okay, thanks, Janet.
Janet, how much do we miss on the philanthropic side? I mean, do we have somebody that's actually just constantly searching for those?
We do not. We do not. And that's always been historically been a problem. And I would love to have that. I would love to have, excuse me, have someone to just take that
Just
over.
hire a procurement specialist and just
Absolutely. Yeah,
assign them
because
to?
that in itself is a talent. That's a profession right there.
We could outsource that, couldn't we? I mean, we could Frank, we could outsource that and just work on a percentage for what the person brought in, right? We're idea people up here, we're full of them.
So yes and no. It is not considered to be ethical for a grant writer to work on a percentage of, and most of them will not work on a percentage. They work on a flat fee. Most funders will ask, many funders will ask if you had a professional grant writer who's working on a percentage basis. But yes, we can outsource it. We've outsourced the Interstate 81. We at a fairly significant level. We do have an outside firm who's working on underwriting
We just
that.
come up with money to pay them instead
That's
of
correct.
working percentage. So
And often it's affordable, but, and we're paying a lot of money for Interstate 81, but there's no question. I mean, Councilor Monto's question about philanthropy, it is untapped.
we had the Bloomberg grant.
We did have Bloomberg, no question.
Yeah, but those are more of a fluke that Janet's on a listserv, she sees it, and we just happen to know it's out there. We're not.
It is not systematic
Right.
in the way that I think Janet is suggesting it could be. I think water alone, we've got a water infrastructure that in some cases is 150, almost 200 years old. There's nothing more fundamental than water, and there's philanthropies that are interested in water and water quality.
And
So,
there's
agreed.
people up to Syracuse University that write grants. They're funded by the state for water infrastructure in the Hudson Valley.
without question.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's entities that we can plug into for that, which exactly what Councilor Monto's talking
And we
about.
look at things like, if we talk about 81 coming down and us actually truly rebuilding the 15th Ward, you're going to need to beautify it and put art up. The state is not going to pay for that. We're going to need to find philanthropy money to do that.
Yep. And some of that our partners outside are working on, but some of it we need to do ourselves.
So is it worth it to add a procurement specialist to the research department?
There'd be no argument from either Janet or me.
Or a professional service line.
Or a
Yeah,
service.
or a larger professional services line. Sure.
Like in terms of the professional services, you mentioned that kind of the fee structure. Are we paying for the application or are we paying if it is obtained?
So in my experience, and Janet can probably speak to it in the municipal world, but in my experience in the not-for-profit world, we were paying for, and in most cases, we were paying for the application. Occasionally, there'd be a specific requirement that there be a dedicated management. So the grant came with the condition that some portion of the funds be used for management. I'm thinking the
No,
CDC grant.
That's the same for me too.
Yeah. So
I think this, myself, anyway, I think that's the world that we should explore more than we are now.
I think, when,
We did do that waiver for the I-81 one that was referenced, where we basically pay $5,000 a month, and we scope out their work, and they're supposed to do, I don't know what it was, 2 substantive applications, and then some outreach on other opportunities that we structure over the course of the year.
And
But
with
that was-
professional services, do we run into union issues or contract concerns?
Maybe now. No, I don't, not yet.
one of the things I would wish and that I hope happens in the near future or soon to be, I like I said, Jenna, I know how great and phenomenal you do and all the work you have going on in your team. But in order for our Syracuse to continue to build and get the top notch, that grant department needs to be heavy loaded with support so that every department comes through there and we're funneling out. So there's always, because there's grants coming, but there's no way that Janet and your team could just with the whole city. It needs that team, Mr. Rudd, needs to be full with maximum with a group of people, because that's what we're going to need for our city to, get money from different grants. So I'm just putting that out there. I think, I know the school district has, they're able to capitalize on millions of dollars of grant money out to the side because they have that. And it's not, I think, with the support and that team, with multiple people running, I think it'll benefit us in the long run with your expertise, Janet. So that's why I asked you about needing, because I know you do a great job. It has nothing to do with you. I just think that if we had another 5 or 6 people that was just on it, and we could be making sure that we maximize all the grants and all the funding throughout to make the city better.
In a hypothetical world, if there were additional procurement specialists, what would recruitment look like, and are there people to fill those positions that are capable and qualified?
It's interesting that you say that because since we are now doing both grants management and grant writing, so it's two completely different skill sets. So initially, when we started moving into the grants management, because there wasn't any other department to do it, the people that I had working for me were grant writers, and that's what they wanted to do. They didn't. They weren't numbers people. But I do think that recruiting, I think would be easier now because our pay structure is a little better. I think that's made a big difference in recruiting. I do think if I could get a few kids right out of college and teach them, all the ins and outs of grant writing, and there's a lot of nuances, that would be something that somebody could carry with them the rest of their life, whether they're here or at a non-for-profit, or, I would think that would be an ideal place to start looking.
Excuse my ignorance. What does GDA stand for? I'm sorry.
DEA?
GDA.
Oh, GDA is a
Yes.
grants disbursement agreement. That's like a contract with DASNY.
Okay.
Janet, on the master list, if we had a total of the grant amount column, what would that number be? Like what is your department bringing in grants, ballpark?
I meant to do that. I ran out of time this morning. But usually we bring in about between $15 and $20 million a year. And that doesn't include the grants management portion.
With 6 people.
And they're doing a procurement part. So like you said, there's 2 programs. There's 2 different process, right? So when they come back and making sure everything is matching up in alignment. And then it's going to be even more now that we're in the housing trust fund, right? So that's a whole nother ballgame
Now,
that you.
a lot of those, and we're happy to get involved in that, but a lot of those grants go right through all the fabulous people at NBD. But, we would be happy to jump in and help wherever we could.
So another question pertaining just to the list. Councilor Caldwell, maybe some months ago, had asked about cameras in the parks. So would that also be coming out of the grants as well for the installation of everything?
Yeah.
Did I miss that?
The cameras are almost primarily the DASNY grants, the New York State grants. And the police department is, and I know that you've been working with them, they are the ones that will determine where the cameras will go.
Okay.
I know that Nader had a couple questions as well.
Well, I just follow up on Councilor Hogan about external help. Correct me, I have the name wrong. Stevens, was her last name, the lady from Casanova? Didn't you just approve?
The 70,000 that went through on the last,
$72,000?
last voting session. It was,
Sorry, I'm not
Is there,
understanding.
do you have somebody that you contract with currently?
Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah Stevens.
Sarah Stevens.
Sarah Stevens is now, she is taking
can answer
over-
them, not me,
I'm
that's-
sorry. She has taken over the programmatic management of the CDC grant, which we had Osha Keaton, who was the one that left to go to the fellowship with the state. I didn't have the capacity to take it all over, so she's doing the programmatic and then we're doing the fiscal
I
stuff.
like that I like you advocating for yourself. I did not have the capacity. I love it. Yeah, it's true.
Another follow-up question, if I may. So you mentioned about the management records.
Yes.
It's a daunting task, and if anybody knows, we have 5,000 boxes of 10,000 boxes
Oh, yeah,
of
we
records.
have-
Where are those now?
Well, that's a very interesting question. The vast majority of them were always over in City Hall Commons.
In the basement.
We have moved about 1,500 over to One Park Place. Another 800, I believe, is coming over next week, over to One Park Place. The departments have all gone through their boxes as much as they can with the time that they have available. And they're weeding out some of the boxes. I'm sure every department has things that they don't need to keep. So that's been freeing up some space for us. But right now, we have about, the city court, we have about 2,800 for city court that we have to, by law, take care of. And they're over there, and about 800 more in City Hall Commons. And I know I have the most fabulous person in my department named Teresa Monet-Sacco, who absolutely, she knows every box. She can give you to within 2 boxes how many we have and where they are and what's in them. So she's fabulous.
So the city's ability to maintain and sustain those?
Oh, yeah, but that's not a problem. I mean, space is a
Just
problem. Space is a problem.
Space is the
problem.
biggest
Right.
concern. We've got the people to do it. We likely, Commissioner OJ will be coming back to the council for approval of some temporary space, because we do need to clear out commons. Our hope is that we're going to be able to make some changes in the basement here and increase our capacity here, but we're probably going to need some swing space while we're doing it. And we forgot our space at the Bova Center.
Oh, right, sorry. We have about 1,500 boxes at the Bova Center, which we also need to get out of the Bova Center because they don't want them there anymore. So we have to find space for another 1,500.
Was that the Friends of Shola Park that brought it to your attention, or cleaning it out?
Oh, no, the school district.
Oh,
The
all right, just wanted to clear.
Yeah, right,
Something
right.
that's not on here, but I want to ask you, since you're talking about space, I don't want us to get left out, because I've been asking now for the last 5 or 6 years that the council get some of that space since we're clearing out offices. We have 14 people in 4 rooms, and I think that's very unfair to us to be cramped up like that.
I understand the concern. Unfortunately, I will make sure that it gets passed along. That's, I'm sorry?
Along and along. So
For 6
the answer
years.
is just
Yeah.
like being ignored. The question, I mean, the request is just basically being ignored with the consideration because
I'm
the
looking at
request's
clearing
been
out
there for
both sides
years.
of law and personnel, so one of those areas should be afforded to give us some space to move out.
But it's too late for that now because that's going to law and all that. So
Yeah.
there's no other place.
We are very much space constrained,
I
without
understand
question.
that, so are we.
Yeah,
14
no,
people
I mean,
on top
I
of
meant
each other
we
in
in
4
general,
rooms.
President Hudson. Yeah, I agree. There is, and the fact that we're using some of the space for dead storage is frustrating for all
I
of
hear
us.
you, Frank, on that, but we're
Yeah.
people.
I know.
You're talking about storage, I'm talking about people.
I agree. No, I'm not disagreeing with you at all, President Hudson.
Anything else for Janet?
Thank you so much.
You guys,
Feel better, Janet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Again, thank you for being so flexible.
Motion to adjourn? Second? All right, thank you very much.
Now go home and get some sleep.